It still seems to me to be a matter more of access than quantity. There's a range of venues, sure, but many more of them are curated now. Particularly in comparison to something like the Anywhere Theatre Festival in Brisbane.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting what Paul's doing up there, and yeah, I'd really like to try and be able to get up there and see something or anything of that and see how it goes. I think, with respect to accessibility and availability, I think that's part of a larger conversation about the changing internal structure of the arts sector, and that there is a very real role now for producers, from not just international touring musicals but way down to independent emerging startup companies, that it's up to producers to go and make the networks and start build relationships with venue owners and with partners and with funding bodies to get stuff to happen. I mean, the days are gone when a group of artists can secure some money from a funding body and put on a show, and the money goes into someone's account and they administer it for everyone, and that's good art. You've got to have a producer now, you just do, and that's also the role for them to be, a venue owner can't field calls from 8 different, groups of artists, wanting, because they should be in charge of putting on a show and putting the show together. Their producer should be the one out there building the relationships with the venue owners, with all those other bodies as well, to make it happen. So they may seem closed, but I don't know. I think venue operators would argue that if someone comes to them with a good pitch that's well prepared, they'll have just as much time for them as they will for anyone else. And that's what a good producer does. Puts together a good pitch and goes and sells it. I mean, I think that role has emerged and been forced onto the sector, I guess. There's always been producers in the arts, but I think now you have to have one. Like I say, you can't apply to a funding body without a producer. It'll be, if you're to register a show at Melbourne Fringe, we don't ask for who's the primary contact for a show. We go, who's your producer? Because that's what the producer should be. And I think it's an opportunity for the sector to grow and to acknowledge the work that goes on in not just acting in a show or writing a show or doing the lights for a show, but the other stuff. That's a real role. It's a full-time job, and that person deserves just as much credit and acknowledgement for the success or otherwise of the show as everyone else involved. So I think that there will be more and more producers as everyone gets on board with the idea. I think we need to find a way to start training and educating them. I think that's, you can't go and do a degree at uni. I'm not saying tertiary education is the answer, but I mean, everyone's got to have a producer, but we're asking a lot of our young and emerging producers to just say, right, start doing it and learn as you go. So I think there are more of them now, and people are acknowledging, the full-time role of this, that it is. And I hope as we start sharing knowledge and disseminating the skills and experience needed to be one, that we'll see even more. I think that can only strengthen the industry.
Making the connection between artists and producers has got to be one of the hardest things to negotiate. It seems a lot depends on luck and the rest on word of mouth to put the right producer together with the right artist. Certainly neither is falling over the other in an effort to connect. It seems like brokering those kinds of partnerships would be an ideal project for festivals like Fringe and Next Wave.
Absolutely, and those kind of informalised networking opportunities and putting yourself in the right place at the right time to meet the right people are some of the hardest and most difficult things to acquire when making a career in the arts. Melbourne Fringe runs a series of forums that start very early on in the year. We start with a general information night, and we run one for producers and one about venues, one about marketing and publicity, and all artists who are registered with the festival know about that. And they're exactly to do that, to try and pass on knowledge, skills and experience, to give people a chance. They're always at a pub somewhere with a bar, so you can have a couple of drinks afterwards. And it's a chance to meet people and try and put yourself out there and ask enough questions so that you find the answers.
Well, since we're on Fringe, you've been here 2 months. What are you thinking? Have you got any revolutionary ideas yet, or are you planning to settle in, make sure you've got the festival running smoothly and then make changes as you see the need?
I think that I'm very fortunate to have walked into an organisation that has so much retained intellectual property. I mean, with Esther and Bo and Lucy and Bronwyn here, that core team has been working together for a few years, and I'm very much still catching up to everything that they know and that they know how to do, and working out just how great they are at their jobs. Often, when other companies go through a change, there's a lot of change that happens, and a few people depart. I feel, as I said, very fortunate that I'm not faced with that scenario, that I've walked in and there's all these great people here who can teach me things. The other thing that's absolutely worth saying is that Emily left in this organisation, and this is my role in particular, in a period of great strength as well. The keynote projects that she had orchestrated over the years have built up this audience, the audience for Melbourne Fringe, and I think its brand and awareness very strongly. So I think this year's festival will see capitalise on those, that existing kind of foundation, and I'd expect, hopefully, big things next year, which will be the festival's 30th anniversary, which I think is a not insignificant landmark. That's a big deal, 30 years to have been around and to grow from what they've grown into, this organisation now, I think is definitely worth celebrating. I think that we will continue to build on the artisan sector development that we do. So those forums that we're talking about, I think you'll see that'll really kind of, we kind of really want to inflate that program as much as we can and disseminate and share the knowledge. So that might spill over into the festival, and you might see it not just happening in the lead up to the festival, but even during the festival, providing artists a chance to meet and greet and meet other producers and presenters. I'd really like it if we could see and attract presenters and programmers from interstate and continue to provide our artists with opportunities to not to sell or pitch their work necessarily, but to meet people and just start those networks. It takes a few times to meet people and for everyone to remember everyone's names, and these relationships aren't born overnight. I'd like to start them sooner rather than later, and continue to build up that interstate audience for our artists' work, to give them that kind of opportunity.
You are also a research fellow working with the Oz Stage project. Are you still involved there, or has Fringe taken over your life?
I'm not working with them at the moment either. I'm still, I still touch with those guys all the time to see how things are going. And that project, will continue apace.
Where are they up to with that at the moment? Are they still developing the Oz East Stage part of the project?
Yeah, they are. So they're still working on the mobile audience input interface. They've run a few trials on that now, so the idea of that is that you would be able to go and see a show and use your mobile phone or internet enabled device to send feedback about the show. So you could send that via Twitter or via a mobile web form or even just by a text message. So the idea is, instead of just people being able to tweet about a show live, you'll be able to send any kind of message and it would capture that feedback for a company or for a group of artists. So this year they're working with a few different pilot companies, and they'll be further refining their methodology of how it works, but I wouldn't be surprised if they get so far as to release the software that we ended up potentially using for Fringe.
Flashing 12 o'clock has been talking to Dr. Neal Harvey, the new creative producer for the Melbourne Fringe Festival. Neal, your last words?
I haven't known these guys to do the same thing twice. I've watched, as long as I've known Melbourne Fringe, I've seen them evolve and grow every year.
Thank you, Neal. Flashing 12 o'clock will broadcast a new interview with one of the thinkers and makers of the Australian performing arts once a month. Broadcasts will be available through this blog or on our YouTube channel. If you have suggestions for possible interview subjects, feel free to post them in the comments section and follow us on Twitter for updates. Thank you for listening.